Welcome back, Cave Dwellers. My name is Patrick Nyland, and this is Game Dev Friday on Saturday again. I promise with 50% certainty that next week's Game Dev Friday will be on Friday. Time management is not my thing. This week I made a basic platformer game without a tutorial, which is why it sucks. So I started off by making this blocky guy. I didn't spend too much time on him because right now the focus is still on walking through learning how to make a game. That being said, the more I look at him, the more I wonder what he's seen with those eyes. Perfect. Okay, so we're done here. Just kidding. The next thing I did here was take some art from my previous project to add a ground because it would be a pretty shitty platformer if there was no ground.
I mean, it's probably still going to be a shitty platformer with the ground, but can't make it worse.
So I added some physics, the player, and the floor, and when I ran it, that happened. Yeah, I was pretty lost at first, but after an embarrassing amount of time, I figured it out. I actually figured out what was causing this problem by accident. I could not figure it out for the life of me, so I decided to just adjust the level of the floor to kind of make it look better while I tried to figure it out. And then I noticed the player wouldn't hover as high when I changed the position of the floor, which made me realize that the problem was the box collider of the floor itself causing the problem. At first, I felt pretty dumb that I made this mistake in the first place, but then I actually felt pretty proud of myself for figuring it out on my own without a tutorial or asking ChatGPT. Baby steps. I'm new to this and I'm going to be making silly mistakes. The important thing is that I learn from them. And there we have it, a box that falls. In an hour, that's pretty much all I accomplished.
To make it worse, I followed that hour up with a 2 hour break.
From there, I built myself a basic movement script, which was a lot simpler than I thought it would be, and I also kind of changed the dimension of the character to make it look a little better. Better is a relative term. He might look stupid to you, but to me, he's beautiful. The whole point of this is to learn how to create a game quickly, rather than spending months and months working on my dream game before I realize I have no idea what I'm doing. There will be plenty of time to make better looking games in the future once I actually know what I'm doing. Or at least I hope I know what I'm doing. So far, I feel like I've learned like nothing. Anyway, now that I have basic movement down, the main problem I have right now is that you can jump infinite times. This was not really an issue I had to deal with last week when I made the Flappy Bird clone because, well, in Flappy Bird, if you fly too high, you die. For this platformer, though, I only want the box dude to be able to jump when he's touching the ground. To fix this, I added lines of code that check when the character is touching objects that are tagged as ground. From there, I added a jumping boolean variable and made it so that the character can only jump when they're not currently in the air. The next thing I need to add to make this platformer functional was a camera that follows the player around, because otherwise you can't see the player as it continues down the level. This was something I was kind of dreading doing going into this project, but it turned out it was actually pretty easy. I was even able to code the camera so it only follows the player down the y-axis and not the x. The next thing I created was art for this portal. That way the character could jump into the next level at the end. I then created a level 1 scene, that way each level can be its own scene in the Unity project. Only I messed up and got rid of what I had built in the sample scene. At first, when I screwed this up, I was really discouraged and I almost gave up on this project entirely. But then I remembered that just because the scene is gone, all the assets I built are still there, so I quickly assembled it again. So fortunately, this time I did not lose anything. But in the future, I do need to pick up some better save habits and backup habits because if this was a project I was working on for a while, that could have really hurt. Hopefully, I learned this lesson now. Hopefully. And there we go. This should work as good as new. So close. Fixed that really quick, and after a 15-minute detour, we were back to where we started. Now that that was fixed, I could finally check if the script I wrote for the portal before was working. Of course it wasn't working, because when does anything I create work on the first try? Originally, I had the portal as a trigger, so I wondered if I maybe didn't understand how triggers work, but turning the trigger off did not fix anything. I eventually realized that when I accidentally deleted the scene and had to start over, I did not set the player's tag as player, which is pretty important because the portal is triggered by objects tagged as players colliding with it. So now I have two basically empty levels. Of course, I'm not going to keep them empty. I'm not that bad of a game developer, so I recycled an old asset from my previous game and made the bird the enemy.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
For now, the way I have this working is when you touch an enemy, you basically just go back to the respawn. There are some issues with it, but for the most part, it works. That can happen, but it works. Clearly, this is not the optimal way to do this. I'm sure there are better ways to do this, but for now, I kind of want to focus on other parts of this game. Like making the bird move up and down, which I actually got on my first try. And now, with the bird and the portal both working, I think we have enough elements here to make a game. I mean, it won't be a good game, but it'll be a game. So, for the first time since taking on this game developer journey, I actually had a chance to kind of develop a level by myself. I used to play Super Mario Maker as a kid, so it was really fun to kind of make my own level for my own game. To make this level, I was pretty much just cloning the ground and the bird to kind of build it out a little bit and then put the portal at the end of it. But in the future, I do want to try getting into using the tile maker in Unity. One step at a time, though. At this point, I'd kind of been working on this project for a while, so I kind of wanted to see if I could make something that worked. Now it was time for me to see if this level worked and if I was able to beat it. I quickly realized that the box's jumps were not high enough to get over that first bird. Still, even though I decided pretty quickly that I was going to change it so that the box could jump a little higher, I still attempted to get over that bird quite a few times. Not one of those attempts was successful. So I played around with the console and I found a more reasonable number for the jump of the player, and it worked. Well, it was supposed to work. I'm not good at this game. Playing around with this, I realized that there was an issue that if the player fell off the map, there was nothing to respawn, so I added that into the code. And when I tested my code, I realized I was able to double jump again, which confused the shit out of me. So I commented out what I had just added to see if it would fix the problem, and it didn't, which meant there was a different issue. At this point, I was pretty stumped. I wasn't sure if I had accidentally broken something in my code without realizing it, so I decided to go to ChatGPT for help. And ChatGPT gave me code that made the player disappear when I jumped, which was worse. After looking through everything over and over and over again, I eventually found out that the reason it was not working was that the ground had lost the ground tag when I had done the whole thing where I had erased the scene by accident. I will say, while these errors are so frustrating to deal with, it is so satisfying to fix them on your own without any help. It's so easy, especially in these first 2 weeks where I've been creating very simple games, to feel like I have no clue what I'm doing when it comes to creating games. But when I'm able to fix a simple error, even if it is simple, on my own, it reminds me that I am learning about how to create games. These are issues that I had no clue what to do about just 2 weeks ago. So that's the game I created this week, or the parts of a game that I created this week. I think I was going for a complete the obstacles to help an alien get back home storyline type thing. Obviously, that game is not complete. There's no start screen, there's only one level, there's no game over when you win or lose, you just kind of just respawn. But despite all that, I'm really proud of it because for the most part, I made it on my own without any real help. I did look up a lot of things here and there, but I didn't follow a tutorial step by step. And for me as a game developer, that's a huge step in the right direction. Next week for Game Dev Friday, which will actually be on Friday, maybe, I'm looking to either continue this game or start a new game with the spaceship that I had at the end of that game and have like an asteroid type shooter game. So let me know in the comments what you'd rather see for next week's video. I think that's going to do it for this week. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out. See you next Game Dev Friday.